Welcome, Wapham crew, new listeners, and Facebook peeps. Secure your tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a Rocky Mountain high, get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners, and settle down snugly at mile marker 420 in colorful Colorado. It is January 1st. That is January 2nd for those of you across the pond and beyond. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you. And thank you so much for joining us on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. I'm so glad you could join me on the beginning of this new year. I'm your host, TessaTNT, and we are broadcasting live tonight from the Mile High Clubhouse. If you're listening to us live right now, you may be listening to us on Facebook. You can also be listening to us under We Are Paradox Media at Spreaker, SPREAKER.com. There's a link in the description of this show. But I hope you guys had an awesome week, an awesome weekend, and an amazing beginning to your new year. I'm hoping it's going to be much better than 2022 was to us, but, Omicron decided to have a baby, and so therefore, there's a new variant of COVID running around, and also, don't forget, China opened up the floodgates, so people are able to travel. One of the flights I saw recently, 52% of the people on the craft tested positive for COVID. Guess what? That's probably going to be 100% turnout because they recycle their air. So if you want to listen to us in your free time, whether you're working it, or working out, make sure you tune in to us under We Are Paradox Media at Spreaker, Twitter, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Facebook, CastBox, Tumblr, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Podcast Chaser, and Podvine. Make sure you mosey on over to our YouTube page under We Are Paradox Media. Please subscribe, like any video that you have listened to or watched, and leave us any comments, whether good or bad, and let us know who would you like to be a guest on the show. We're willing to reach out and touch somebody. We're gonna bring them on the show and kind of pick their brain for a little bit. Have you guys made any New Year's resolutions? For me, I just hope to be a better human being this year and hope to help as many people as I can on this side and the next. So tonight, I have a treat for all my guys and gals out there. Tonight, we will be having story time with me, TessaTNT. Why can't I see you? Guess what? Sundays are pretty hardcore on me. But, as the picture, this is the fox from Rico, Colorado. There's a mine up there, and we were guarding the barrels, etc., making sure nobody shot at it, to let all those toxic chemicals out. That actually happened to us not too long ago. We had a coal mine spill, and it was pretty bad. People were rafting down the river just to prove it was okay, but really wasn't. Oh, if you can hear that baby crying in the background, that's my grandson. That's Archer Chungus. He's in there with his grandpa, his papa. He loves his papa so much, and he's such a good boy. He's so beautiful. Mom and Dad went on date night tonight. It's important to get out and enjoy yourselves and be, like I said, individuals. So we will be reading from Real Hauntings, True American Ghost Stories by Holzer. I don't know if you know who that is, but there's actually a show on Discovery Channel where his daughter and some other paranormal peeps are going through his files and all of his past investigations and revisiting these locations. So that's pretty cool. Chapter 12. A Minnesota Theater Ghost. For this account, maybe try to reload it. There's like a line that goes like this and turns into an arrow where you can reload the page. Or just look it up again on Google.
I looked it up 2 times.
What? Well, when I go on break, I'll come out and help you. I love you. For this account, I am indebted to a creative production assistant in a Minneapolis advertising agency by the name of Deborah Turner. Miss Turner got hooked on some of my books and started to look around in the Twin Cities for cases that might whet my appetite for ghost hunting. Being also musically inclined with an interest in theater, it is natural that she should gravitate toward the famed Guthrie Theater, named after the famous director, which is justly known as the pride of Minneapolis. At the theater, she met some other young people, also in their early 20s, with whom she shared her interest in psychic phenomena. Imagine her surprise when she discovered that she had stumbled upon a most interesting case. Richard Miller was born in Manhattan, Kansas in 1951. Until age 10, he lived there with his father, a chemist, in government service. Then his father was transferred to England and Richard spent several years going to school in that county. After that, he and his family returned to the United States and moved to Edna. This left Richard not only with a vivid recollection of England, but also somewhat of an accent which, together with his childhood in Kansas, gave him somewhat of an unusual personality. His strange accent became the subject of ridicule by other students at Edna Morningside High School, where he went to school, and it did not go down well with the shy, introspective young man. In the 10th grade, at his school, he made friends with another young man, Fred, I don't even know if I can say this last name, Huevumaki. Yes, I believe that is it. And a good close relationship sprang up between the two boys. It gave Fred a chance to get to know Richard better than most of the other fellows in school. As if the strange accent were not enough to make him stand out from the other boys in the area, Richard was given to sudden, jerky movements, which made him a good target for sly remarks and jokes of his fellow students. The Millers did not have much of a social life, since they also did not quite fit in the pattern of life in the small town of Edna. During the years spent in an English school, Richard known corporal punishment, since it is still part of the system in some English schools. This terrified him and perhaps contributed toward his inability to express himself fully and freely. Somehow he never acquired a girlfriend as the other students did, and this too bothered him a lot. He couldn't for the world understand why people didn't like him more, and often talked about it to his friend Fred. When both young men reached the age of 16, they went to Guthrie Theater, where they got jobs as ushers. They worked at it for 2 years. Richard Miller got along well with the other ushers, but developed a close friendship only with Fred Kiovanmaki and another fellow, Barry Peterson. It is perhaps a strange quirk of fate that both Richard Miller and Barry Peterson never reached manhood, but died violently long before their time. However, Richard's parents decided he should go to the university and quit his job. In order to oblige this to his parents, he gave up the job as an usher and moved into Territorial Hall for his first year at the university. However, the change did not increase his ability to express himself or to have a good social life. Also, he seemed to have felt that he was catering to his parents' wishes and became more antagonistic toward them. Then, too, it appears that these students also made him the butt of their jokes. Coincidentally, he developed a vision problem, with cells breaking off of his retina and floating in the inner humor of the eye. This caused him to see spots before his eyes, condition for which there is no cure. However, he enjoyed skiing because he knew how to do it well and joined the university ski club. But Richard's bad luck somehow was still with him. On a trip to Colorado, he ran into a tree, luckily breaking only his skis. When summer came to the area, Richard rode his bike down a large dirt hill into a rough ground and tall weeds at the bottom, injuring himself in the process. Fortunately, a motorcyclist came by just then and got Richard to go to the emergency ward of a nearby hospital. All this may have contributed towards an ultimate breakdown, or as the students would call it, Richard just flipped out. He was hospitalized at the university hospital and was allowed home only on weekends. During that time, he was on strong medication, but when the medication did not improve his condition, the doctor took him off it and sent him home. The following February 4th, he decided to try skiing again and asked his father to take him out to Buck Hill, one of the skiing areas not far from town. But to his dismay, Richard discovered that he couldn't ski anymore, and this really depressed him. When he got home, there was a form letter waiting for him from the university, advising him that because he had skipped all the final exams due to his emotional problems at the time, he received F's in all of his classes and was on probation. All this seemed too much to Jim. He asked his mother for $40, ostensibly to buy himself new ski boots. Then he drove down to Sears on Lake Street, where he bought a high-powered pistol and shells. That was on Saturday, and he killed himself in the car. He wasn't found until Monday morning, when the lot-clearing crew found him with most of his head shot off. Richard Miller was given a quiet burial in Fort Snelling National Cemetery. His parents, Dr. and Mrs. Byron S. Miller, requested that memorials to the Minnesota Association for Mental Health be sent instead of flowers. Richard's mother had always felt that her son's best years had been spent as an usher at the Guthrie Theater. Consequently, he was cremated wearing his Guthrie Theater blazer. The date was February 7th, and soon enough the shock of the young man's untimely death wore off, and only his immediate family and the few friends he had remembered Richard Miller. A few weeks after the death of the young usher, a woman seated in the theater in an aisle seat came up to the usher in charge of the aisle and asked him to stop other ushers from walking up and down during the play. The usher in charge was shocked since he had At the top, hold on. The usher in charge asked her to describe what she had seen, and she described Richard Miller, even to the mole on his cheek. The incident is on record with Guthrie Theater. Minneapolis Tribune columnist Robert T. Smith interviewed Craig Scherfenberg, director of audience development at the theater, concerning the incident. There was no one in our employ at the time who fit the description, the director said, but it fit the dead young man perfectly. In the summer, several years later, 2 ushers were asked to spend the night in the theater to make sure some troublesome air conditioning equipment was fully repaired. The Guthrie Theater has a thrust stage with openings onto the stage on all 3 sides. These openings lead to an actor's waiting area, which in turn has a door opening onto an area used as a lounge during intermissions. The 2 young men were sitting in this waiting area with both doors open, and they were the only people in the building. At 1 o'clock in the morning, they suddenly heard the piano on stage begin to play. Stunned by this, they watched in silence when they saw a cloud-like form floating through the lounge door and hover in the center of the room. One of the ushers thought the form was staring at him. As quickly as they could gather their wits, they left the room. One of Deborah Turner's friends had worked late one evening shortly after this incident, repairing costumes needed for the next day's performance. She and a friend were relaxing in the stage area while waiting for a ride home. As she glanced into the house, she noticed that the lights on the aisle that had been the dead ushers were going on and off, as if someone were walking slowly up and down. She went to the ladies' room a little later, and suddenly she heard pounding on one wall, eventually circling the room and causing her great anxiety, since she knew that she and her friend were the only people in the house. When the Guthrie Theater put on a performance of Julius Caesar, one of the extras was an older woman by the name of Mary Perez. She freely admitted that she was a psychic and had been able to communicate with her dead sister. She told her fellow actors that she could sense Richard Miller's presence in the auditorium. Somehow she thought that the ghost would make himself known during Mark Antony's famous speech to the Romans after Caesar's death. The scene was lit primarily by torches when the body of Julius Caesar was brought upon the stage. Jason Harlan, a young usher, and one of the colleagues were watching the performance for different vantage points in the theater. One boy was in one of the tunnels leading to the stage, the other in the audience. Both had been told of Mary Perez's prediction, but were disappointed when nothing happened at that time. In boredom, they began to look around the theater. Independently of each other, they saw smoke rising to the ceiling and shaping itself into a human form. Both young men said that the form had human eyes. The aisle that the late Richard Miller worked was number 18. 2 women in the acting company of Julius Caesar, named Terry and Gigi, complained that they had much trouble with the door at the top of the aisle 18 for no apparent reason. Bruce Benson, who now worked aisle 18, told the people that complained about the usher walking up and down the aisle during performances. Bruce Margolis, who works the stage door, leaves the building after everyone else. Then, when he was there one night all alone, the elevator began running on its own. All this talk about a ghost induced some of the young ushers to try to make contact with him holy shnikes, via the Ouija board. Not a good idea. Dan Berg, head usher, took a board with him to the stage and, along with colleagues Bruce Benson and Scott Herner, tried to communicate with the ghosts. For a while, nothing happened. Then all of a sudden, the board spelled tiptoe to the tech room. When they asked why, board spelled the word ghost. They wanted to know which tech room the ghost was referring to. Downstairs? No. The communicator informed them upstairs. Then the board signed off with the initials MIL. At that, one of the men tipped over the board and wanting nothing further to do with it. In November of the next year, an usher worked at the theater told columnist Robert Smith it was after dark, a night performance. Everyone had left the theater but me. I'd forgotten my gloves and returned to retrieve them. I glanced into the theater and saw an usher standing in one of the aisles. It was him. He saw me and left. I went around to the aisle and couldn't find anything. There is also an opera company connected with the Guthrie Theater. One night, one of the ladies working for the opera company was driving home from Guthrie Theater. Suddenly, she felt a presence beside her in the car. Terrified, she looked around and became aware of a young man with dark curly hair, glasses, and a mole on his face. He wore a blue coat with something red on his face. Something red was in his pocket. The Guthrie Theater blazer. With a sinking feeling, she realized that she was looking at the ghost of Richard Miller. For the past few years, however, no new reports have come in concerning the unfortunate young man. Could it be that he has finally realized that there await him greater opportunities in the next dimension, and though his life on Earth was very unsuccessful, or actually successful, his passing into the spiritual life might give him most of the opportunities his life on Earth had denied him? At any rate, things have now quieted down in aisle 18 and the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis. Part 4. Ghosts in the American South. You didn't take a bath yet. Yeah, go look in the mirror. You don't have to go to bed right now. It's only 7:30. Who said you have to go to bed?
I have to take a bath right now.
You really need to, because you're going to school in the new year, 2023. Okay, I will come out and tell you when. Nope, I still have about 34 minutes. I love you.
So dear, just sit there. Quiet.
I love you too. The Phantom Grandfather. Grover C. was one of those colorful old-timers you hardly see anymore these days, not even in the Deep South. It wasn't that Grover had any particular background in anything special, far from it. He was an untutored man who owed his success solely to his own willpower and an insatiable curiosity that led him places his education, or lack thereof, would have prevented him from ever reaching. He saw the light of day just before the turn of the century in rural North Carolina. At the age of 19, he married for the first time, but his wife Fanny and the child was bore him both died from what was then called childbed fever, or lack of proper medical treatment. He had not yet chosen any particular career for himself, but was just looking around and did odd jobs here and there. A year later, he was married again to a lady from Georgia. After their first girl was born, they moved to Columbus, Georgia, and Mr. C worked in a local mill for a while. This didn't satisfy his drive, however, and shortly afterward, he and his brother Robert opened a grocery store. The store did right well until the Hoover panic, as they called it, and then they managed to sell out and buy a farm in Harris County. Life was pretty placid, and after an accident in which he lost his daughter, Mr. C moved back to Columbus and tried his hand at the grocery business once more. About this time, the restless gentleman met a lady from Alabama, as a result of which he became the father of an extracurricular little girl in addition to his own family, which eventually consisted of a wife and 9 children. When his second-born child died of an infectious disease, Mr. C had his long-delayed breakdown, and for several years he was unable to cope with his life. During those rough years of slow, gradual recuperation, his daughter Agnes ran the store for him and supported the family. As his health improved and he began to return to a happier and more constructive outlook on life, he developed an interest in real estate. With what money he could spare, he bought and sold property, and before long, he did so well he could dispense with the grocery store. Soon, he added a construction business to his real estate dealings and was considered a fairly well-to-do citizen in his hometown. This status naturally attracted a variety of attached women, and even some who were attached or semi-detached, as the case may have been, and Mr. C had himself a good old time. Knowledge of his interest in other ladies could not fail to reach his wife, and eventually he was given a choice by his wife. It was either her or them. He picked them, or more specifically, a lady next door, and for 13 years he was reasonably faithful to her. Eventually, she disliked living with a man who was not married to, especially when he happened to be married to someone else, even though he had brought her a cute little house of her own in Columbus. Mr. C was not particularly happy about his state of affairs either, for he developed a penchant for drinking during those years. After they separated, the lady next door left town and got married. Far from returning to the bosom of his family, now that the other woman had given him the gate, Grover looked elsewhere, and what he found apparently pleased him. By now, he was in his late 60s, but his vigorous personality wasn't about to be slowed down by so silly a reason as advancing age. In 1962, he met a practical nurse by the name of Madeline, who turned out to be the opposite of what the doctor had ordered. After a particularly heavy argument, she kicked him in the nose. When it did not stop bleeding, she became alarmed and took him to the hospital. The family went to see him there, even though his wife had not exactly forgiven him. But at this point, it mattered little. Mr. C also complained of pain in his side, and the children firmly believed that the practical nurse had also kicked him in that area. Since he died shortly afterward, it was a moot question whether or not she had done so, because Mr. C's abilities no longer corresponded to her amorous expectations. The old gent certainly did not discuss it with his family. He was 70 when he died, and Madeline was a mere 60. Death was somewhat unexpected despite the fact that Mr. C had suffered from various ailments. At first, he shared the hospital room with another older man, but several days later, a young man was sent in to be with him. The young man's complaint was that he had a lollipop stick stuck in his throat. There probably aren't too many young men with such a predicament in medical annals, and even fewer in Columbus, Georgia. The family found this mighty peculiar, even more so since the young man was a close relative of Madeline and Madeline, the practical nurse. They complained to the hospital authorities, and the young man was moved. It is not known whether the lollipop stick was ever removed from his throat, but chances are it was, or we would have heard more of it. Young men with lollipop sticks in their throats either die from them or become sideshow attractions in the circus. The records showed neither, so it must be assumed that the lollipop stick got unstuck somehow, somewhere along the line. At any rate, Mr. C was now guarded by one of his children each night, the children taking turns. They are firmly convinced that the practical nurse slipped her erstwhile benefactor some poison, and that perhaps the boy with the lollipop stick in his throat might have done her bidding and administered it to the old gent. This was a pretty sticky arrangement, of course, and hard to prove, especially as no autopsy was ever performed on Mr. C. But it is conceivable that Madeline made a discovery about her friend that could have induced her to speed his failure to recover, or to do so by any means at her command. She knew her way around the hospital and had ready access to his room. She also had equally ready access to his office, thereby hangs a strange tale. On one of the infrequent occasions when Mr. C slept at home, his estranged wife was making up the bed. This was 5 months before his demise. As she lifted the mattress, she discovered underneath it a heavy envelope, about 6 by 10 inches in size, crammed full with papers. She looked at it and found written on it, in Mr. C's large lettering, "This is not to be opened until I am dead. I mean good and dead. Daddy." She showed the envelope to her daughter Agnes, but put it back since she did not wish to enter into any kind of controversy with her husband. Evidently, the envelope must be taken by him to his office some time later, for when she again made his bed 2 weeks before his passing, when he was still walking around, she found it gone. But there was a second, smaller envelope there, this one not particularly marked or inscribed. She left it there. A short time later, Mr. C was taken to the hospital. When Mrs. C made the bed, she found that the small envelope had also disappeared. While the C's house in Columbus was not exactly a public place, neither was it an impregnable fortress, and anyone wishing to do so could have walked in at various times and quickly removed the envelope. As far as the office was concerned, that was even easier to enter, and the family had no doubt whatever that Madeline took both envelopes for reasons best known to herself, although they could not actually prove any of it. At no time did the old gent say any sort of unkind word about Madeline, at least not to his children, preferring perhaps to take his troubles with him into the great beyond. After his death, which came rather suddenly, the family found a proper will, but as Mr. C had generously built homes for most of his children during his lifetime in the 1950s, there was only a modest amount of cash in the bank accounts and no great inheritance for anyone. The will named Mrs. C as executor, and as there was nothing to contest, it was duly probated. But the family did search the office and the late Mr. C's effects at the house for these two envelopes that were still missing. Only the wife and daughter Agnes knew of them, even though nobody and everybody had access to the house. The servants would not have taken them, and the safe was empty. As the old gent had occasionally slept in his office on a couch, the family looked high and low in his office, but with negative results. The only thing that turned up in addition to the will itself was the neatly typed manuscript of a book of biblical quotations. Mr. C had been a serious Bible scholar, despite his uneducated status, and the quotes arranged by subject matter and source represented many thousands of hours of work. When his daughter Marie had seen him working on his project in 1962, she had suggested that he have scribbled notes typed up, and she had prevailed upon her Aunt Catherine to undertake the job, which the latter did. Somewhat forlornly, Marie picked up the manuscript and wondered whether someone might not buy it and put a little cash into the estate that way. The mystery of the disappearing envelopes was never solved. Even greater than the puzzle of their disappearance was the question about their content. What was in them that was so important to the old gent that he had to hide it under the mattress? So important that someone took them secretly and kept them from being turned over to the family as they should have been. Although there is no evidence whatever for this contention, Marie thinks there might have been some valuables left over from Grover C.'s love child, the one he had with a lady from Alabama early in his romantic life. At any rate, after several months of fruitless searches, the family let the matter rest and turned to other things. Grover C. would have gone on to his just reward, especially in the minds of his family, if it weren't for the matter of some peculiar unfinished business. About a year after Grover's death, Louis C., one of the sons of the deceased, as they say in the police records, was busy building a brick flower planter in his home in Columbus. This was one of the houses his father had erected for his children, and Mr. C., the son, had been living in it happily without the slightest disturbance. Louis was 30 years old, and the mystery of his father's disappearing envelopes did not concern him very much at this point. Here he was at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a brisk March day in 1967, working on his planter. Giving him a hand with it and handing him one brick after another was a professional bricklayer by the name of Fred, with whom he had worked before. They were in the living room, and Louis was facing the back door, Fred the front door. "A brick, please," said Louis, without turning around. No brick came. He asked again. Still no brick. He then looked up at his helper and saw him frozen to the spot, gazing at the front door. "What's the matter, Fred?" he inquired. He had never seen Fred so frightened. Finally, as if awakened from a bad dream, Fred spoke. "I've just seen Mr. C," he said. "Big as life." "But Mr. C has been dead for a year," the son replied. Fred had worked for Grover for many years, and he knew him well. "What did he look like?" the son inquired. "White. Light," Fred replied, and then went on to describe the figure in white pants he had seen at the door. Although it was only the bottom half of a man, he had instantly recognized his late employer. Grover was bow-legged, and the white pants facing him surely were as bow-legged as old Grover had been. There was no doubt about whose lower half it was that had appeared and then gone up in a puff again. Louis shook his head and went on with his work, but a short time later he began to appreciate what Fred had experienced. In the middle of the night, he found himself suddenly awake by reason of something in the atmosphere, undefinable, but still very real. The lights in his bedroom were off, but he could see down the hallway, and what he saw was a man wearing a white shirt, dark pants, and with no head. The headless gentleman was tiptoeing down the hallway toward him. Lewis could only stare at the apparition, which he instantly recognized as his late father, head or no head. When the ghost saw that Lewis recognized him, he took 3 leaps backwards and disappeared into thin air. Unfortunately, Catherine, Lewis's wife, did not believe a word of it. For several months, the subject of father's headless ghost could not be mentioned in conversation. Then, in December 1968, Lewis and Catherine were asleep one night. When about 2:30 a.m., they were both roused by the sound of heavy footsteps walking down the hall from the bedrooms towards the living room. As they sat up and listened with nary a heartbeat, they could clearly hear how the steps first hit the bare floor and then the carpet, sounding more muffled as they did. Finally, they resounded louder again as they reached the kitchen floor. Lewis jumped out of bed, ready to fight what he was sure must be an intruder. Although he looked the house over from top to bottom, he found no trace of a burglar, and all the doors were locked. 15 minutes. In retrospect, they decided it was probably Grover paying them a visit, but why? True, he had built them a house. True, they had some of his effects, especially his old pajamas, but what would he want with his old pajamas, where he now was? Surely he could not be upset by the fact that his son was wearing them. They decided then that Grover was most likely trying to get their attention because of those envelopes that were still missing or some other unfinished business, but they didn't like it. For who would like one's headless father popping in the middle of the night? But apparently Grover did not restrict his nocturnal visits to his son Lewis's place. His granddaughter Marie, who lived in Atlanta, had come to visit her grandfather's house in the spring of 1968. The house had no city water but used water from its own well. It was therefore necessary to carry water into the house from outside. On one such occasion, when she had just done this and was returning with an empty basin, Marie stepped into what looked like a puddle of water. She started to mop up the puddle only to find that the spot was actually totally dry. Moreover, the puddle was ice cold, while the water basin she had just carried in was still hot. She found this most unusual, but did not tell anyone about it. Within a matter of hours, 8-year-old Randy reported seeing a man in a dark suit in the bathroom when the bathroom was obviously empty. Apparently, the old gent liked children, for little Joel was playing the piano in his Atlanta home in February 1969 when he heard the sound of shuffling feet approach. Then there was the tinkling of glasses, and all this time no one was visible. Grover had always liked to drink and a little music. Soon Marie began to smell carnations in her house when no one was wearing them or using any perfume. The aroma lingered for a moment and then disappeared, as if someone wearing this scent was just passing through the house. In 1967, her Aunt Mary came to visit her in Atlanta, and the conversation turned to the mysterious scent. "I'm glad you mentioned this," the aunt exclaimed, and reported a similar problem. Both she and her husband would smell the same scent repeatedly in their own house, sometimes so strongly that they had to leave the house and go out for some fresh air, but the scent followed them on the way, and on one occasion sat with them in their car, so on the way to church on Sunday. They weren't too sure whether it was more like carnations or just a funeral smell, but it surely was a smell that had no rational explanation. Then, in 1968, Mary informed her niece that a new perfume had suddenly been added to their list of phenomenon. This one was a spicy scent like a man's aftershave lotion. Not longer after this report, Marie smelled the same sharp men's perfume in her own house in Atlanta, in her den. This was particularly upsetting because they had shut off that room for the winter and no perfume or anyone wearing it had been in it for months. In 1969, she had occasion to visit her grandfather's house in Columbus once again. She found herself wandering into her late grandfather's old bedroom. She stopped at his dresser and opened the drawer. There she found her spicy scent, a bottle of Avon hair lotion that he had used. None of her husband's eau de cologne bottles had a similar smell. This was it. But how had it traveled all the way to Atlanta? Unless, of course, Grover was wearing it. Marie was upset by her grandfather's insistence on continuing to visit his kinfolk and not staying in the cemetery as respectable folk are supposed to do, but at least according to the traditional view of the dead. But evidently, Grover was far from finished with his life, and judging from the lively existence he had led prior to his unexpected departure from this vale of tears, he had a lot of energy left over. That, combined with the genuine grievance over unfinished business, especially the missing 2 envelopes, must have been the cause for his peripatetic visits. Marie decided not to wait for the next one and went to see a card reader in Columbus. The card reader told her only that she had a restless grandfather who wished her well. Unfortunately, if the cause for Grover's continued presence could be ascertained, there was no way in which the missing envelopes could be legally recovered. Marie tried in vain to get a local psychic to make contact with her grandfather. Finally, she turned her attention to the manuscript of Bible quotes. Perhaps it was the book he wanted to see published. Whatever it was, she must have done the right thing, or perhaps all that talk about the headless grandfather had pleased the old gent's ego enough to pry him loose from the earth plane. At any rate, no further appearances have been reported, and it may well be that he has forgotten about those envelopes by now, what with the attractions of his new world absorbing his interest, unless, of course, he is merely resting and gathering strength. Well, on that note, boys and girls, we are going to go to our first music break. On this break, we have Miss Mia Savage, and she will be singing Your Skeleton, Our New Reality, Let Me Be Your Home, and Lemurian Crypto. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this music break.
No matter how I felt. shit that he brings anymore. You're mine. You're mine. Tonight. You're mine. You're mine. You're mine. read my crypto? Take me to your leader or leave me alone. Somebody please take me out. The rest of
Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us this evening in this new year on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. This evening, we have been reading from Hans Holzer's Real Hauntings, True American Ghost Stories. (14) The Ghost of the British Spy. Spy drops, or secret meeting places where spies may meet and more or less freely exchange information, for which of course they are highly paid, must exist in quite a number of Washington, D.C. But how many of them are ghostly spy drops? Not one of them, I'd wager, except, of course, possibly the one in Arlington I know about. It all started with Ruth Montgomery, a journalist from the Hearst Syndicate and then still officially a skeptic in matters psychic, called my attention to a friend's plight. Would I please help and look into the matter of a haunting in suburban Arlington? this particular friend was a rather important man and a little nervous about the wrong kind of publicity. I can be the soul of discretion when properly asked, and I assured Ruth that I would do everything in my power to prevent information about the investigation she asked me to undertake from leaking to the press, at least in such a manner that it would hurt anyone standing in the community. The gentleman in question was Bob Gray, an official with a large advertising agency who worked out of Washington, D.C. Until recently, he had been in government. In fact, he was secretary to the cabinet in Eisenhower administration. I was somewhat surprised by a column in which Ruth Montgomery heralded my coming to the haunted house. I'm quite sure that Sybil Leek, my English friend who had just begun to work with me as a medium, had never read the particular column. For one thing, newly arrived in this country, she was not aware of the identity or the fact of Ruth Montgomery, nor was she in the habit of picking up local newspapers and reading gossip columns. Later, I questioned Sybil about it and showed her the column in question, and was assured that she had never seen it or been told about it. I had no reason to doubt Sybil's honesty, and under the circumstances am confident that the little that Ruth Montgomery did publish about the case never reached Sybil Leek's knowledge. Here is Ruth Montgomery's own submission of what had happened until May 1965 that had caused Bob Gray to seek my help. Bob bought the rambling house on a wooded hillside 3 years ago from a foreign official who seemed so reluctant to give possession that it took Gray 6 months to get him out. Almost immediately afterwards, neighbors began calling to tell him that the house was haunted and to report rumors of a secret panel within. Gray, a leader in the Eisenhower Great Crusade, merely scoffed. But while doing some yard work, he discovered a mysterious tunnel leading from the hillside to the bedroom on the ground floor. It divided into 2 passageways, and several empty cement sacks were found inside. When the new owner got around to painting the walls of the bedroom, he says he distinctly heard his name called twice, but no earthly visitors were present. Fearing that his driveway might cave into the tunnels, he prosaically had them filled in with cement. Shortly afterwards, he agreed to keep a big dog belonging to the widow of Chicago Tribune publisher Robert R. McCormick while she went abroad. To his chagrin, Gray was awakened every 4 a.m. by the barking of the dog in the corner of the library. The dog eventually returned home and gave up his 4 a.m. barking. Eerie happenings continued, however, at Gray's residence. In the middle of the night, he heard music coming from the living room, and, on going downstairs to investigate, he discovered that the player piano had turned itself on. He mentioned it a few evenings later, and immediately after a guest proclaimed that he had not believed in ghosts, a 30-mile-an-hour wind whooshed through the closed room, according to Gray and his friends. At a recent dinner party, Bob again spoke of the alleged haunting, the mysterious panel, which had not come to light, and the dog's nocturnal barking in the same spot each night. One of the women slipped into the library and in a few minutes excitedly shouted that she had found it. The other guests sprinted into the room, and there it was. By removing the books and pushing on a panel that looked like all the others, an aperture to a closet appeared. Behind it was a 5-foot-high block of cement to bar whatever lay on the other side. An architect who came to inspect the secret closet said the cement had obviously been spread by an amateur. As no one was paying us to come down and look into the matter, I had to wait until I was sent down to publicize one of my books. The date was June 15th, 1965, and Sybil Leek and I had rooms at the Washington Hilton Hotel. Even if Sybil had no knowledge of this column, apparently The Washington newspaper fraternity did indeed. During our stay, we learned to our surprise that everyone in Washington knew about our coming to look into the haunted house. Fortunately, I was always present when the question, "Where are you going to go to look for ghosts?" was asked. In 1 or 2 cases, I was able to prevent the name of Bob Gray being mentioned in front of Sybil. This was not as difficult as it seems, since I never left her side during the interviews. When the newspapermen had left, I breathed a little easier. Sybil was still in the dark about the whole thing. She knew we had to come down to look into a haunted house, but she knew nothing further. For that matter, neither did the newspapermen, except for what Ruth Montgomery had prematurely disclosed in her column. Immediately after our arrival, I had telephoned Ruth and received exact instructions on how to get to the house in Arlington. That very evening, we drove out in a taxicab, almost got lost en route, and when we finally arrived at the house, we realized why it was so difficult to find. Situated in the most expensive section of Arlington, the house was located on a secluded hillside and was surrounded by trees and bushes. The nearest house was visible, but there must have been considerable privacy at all times for those in the Gray's house. On first inspection, the house itself appeared perhaps 40 or 50 years old and seemed solid and somewhat imitative of European country houses. Apparently, we were the last ones to arrive, for I noticed several cars parked about the front and back entrances. At the door, we were greeted by Bob Gray and Ruth Montgomery, and after an exchange of polite greetings, we were led into the living room on the ground floor of the house. There we met another 5 or 6 people, including Arthur Ford, who had come as an observer and not in his capacity as a renowned medium. He and Ruth Montgomery had been friends for years, and she had invited him to witness the investigation. I decided first to let Sybil look around the place and to stay close to her, at the same time requesting that no one talk to her or say anything about the experiences that they might have had in the house. Afterward, we returned to the living room, and Sybil sat down in a comfortable chair in the middle of the room, with me in a chair next to her and others loosely grouped around. There was expectation in the air, for Ruth Montgomery had assured Bob Gray that Sybil Leek and I would merely get to the heart of the matter. I knew from experience that Sybil would be first to give me her clairvoyant impressions about the house before going into a full trance. There was incidentally nothing about the house or the room that we were in that was in the slightest but disturbing or eerie. It seemed a pleasant, relaxed atmosphere, and if I had not known that there was something strange about the house, I would have taken it for just another suburban residence. I tapped Sybil on the hand and looked at her expectantly. "Sybil, do you feel anything in the atmosphere of this downstairs room that seems out of the ordinary?" "Not particularly in this room. I feel it much more in the region of the doorway as you come in the house. I think that must be the front room, and at the room on the right as you come in. It gives me a much stronger atmosphere." "Is there any disturbing feelings in this room that we are in now?" "I am disturbed now, but I'm more disturbed since I went into the other room." "What is it that seems to disturb you?" "Something very restless and also very exciting." "Man or woman?" "Well, I don't know. I just know there's something very restless that has probably been here for some time. I don't really think it's too long, but something very, very restless and inclined to be noisy." "And you don't know what it wants?" "No, I don't know what it wants." "All right, let us try and see whether we can get it to make contact directly." "Who are you?" I said as soon as Sybil was entranced. Peter Ellis. The voice, very masculine and not at all like Sybil's own, was very British. Is this your house? No. Do you live here? No. What are you doing here? Hiding. Why are you hiding? I have to get something from the girl. Who is the girl? What is her name? Marilyn. Marilyn what? Wade. Marilyn Wade. Does she live here? In an almost indistinguishable voice, the entranced medium mentioned, some children live here. Evidently, Marilyn had some working connection with those children. Whose children are they? Wasier's. Does he live in the house? Lives here. Who owns the house? The Vassar. Can I help you in any way? Find the papers. Well, if you don't tell me anything about them, how will I recognize them? They are here, she said. They were here. Who said? What has Marilyn got to do with the papers? She wrote part of them. For whom? For me. What is in the papers? I don't know. Who gave you the papers? Lord Case. Lord Keys? The British pronunciation of the name would sound as if spelled case, I realized. Case, case, case. Did you work for him? Don't ask questions. Did you work for Lord Keys? Yes. In what capacity? I'm not answering questions. Is he alive? No. What were the papers concerned with? I don't know. What profession do you have? I am a greyhound. You're a what? Greyhound. Greyhound? What does that mean? Find out. How long are you in this house now? 3 weeks. What date did you come here? May 26. What year? 1935. 1935? Did anything happen to you in this house? I got lost. You got lost? In which way did you get lost? I don't know. I got confused. Who did you meet outside of Maryland? Did you meet anyone else in this house? Devasser. Would you spell the name for me? Devasser. Devasser? Yes. What did you do with him? What was the reason for meeting this person? I shan't tell you. You must tell me if I am to help you. Find the papers. If you will tell me why, I can help you, not any other way. She is not to be helped. Who are the papers for? Everyham. Who is he? He was here. Repeat that name. Everyham. Abraham? No, I, not A. Ibrahim? Ibrahim? Ibrahim. Where does he live? I don't know. Did you meet him? Yes. Here in this house? Upstairs. And what happened during your meeting? I nearly hit him. He was not a gentleman? In which way was he not a gentleman? He lost his temper. Why did he lose his temper? Because he asked questions and I didn't answer. What did he want to know of you? Questions like you. About the papers? Yes. And why couldn't you tell him? I'm a greyhound. You are a greyhound. For which government? British. Did anyone hurt you? Yes. Who? Abraham. Who does he work for? Why do you ask? Because I'd like to help you. I'm on your side, remember? I've come a long way to help you. Now I'm here. That is proof enough that I'm on your side, is it not? No. You're speaking to me and I'm listening. What would you like us to do? Find the papers. Where would I find them? Where the hell is Marilyn? Are they in the house? Yes. Are they hidden in this house? Yes. Where are they hidden? In the wall. In the wall? Suddenly, the voice grew angry and desperate. Now I'm telling you. I'm on your side, my friend. I will help you carry out your plans. You have my word of honor. I'll get them myself. You cannot. You are not what you used to be. Something has happened to you. Go away. Then you'll be alone again, and it will be many, many years before anyone will find you. Tell me, is there anything in the wall? I'm not telling you if he kills me. No one is going to touch you. I will protect you. Oh, the dog barks faintly in the background. The dog. What about the dog? What about the dog? Is there anything about the dog you want to tell me? No, no, no. Agitated breathing. Tell me why you are upset. Why are you upset? I'm here to help you. You've been hurt. Let me go outside. I'll help you. Do you want to stay in this house or do you wish to leave? I want to go outside. What would you do outside? Get some air. Is there an errand you wish to make outside? Yes, yes. Can I make it for you? I want some air. Why do you want some air? Has someone hurt you? Breathe. Tell me, what is there downstairs? What is downstairs in this house? He sleeps there. Who does sleep there? Abraham. Then why does he sleep there? What does he do in this house? Works and works and works. What is his profession, his work? What does he do? Steals papers. The voice had a tinge of sarcasm now mixed in with the anguish and bitterness. How did he get into this house? Visited. Did you see him visit? Yes. What were you doing here? Watching. Watching what? People lying. Who are you watching? Abraham. What is in those papers? Don't ask. I have to ask if I am to help you. I shan't tell you. Do you realize that this house is no longer in the same hands? That time has gone on? Time? What year do you think it is? 35. No, this is 65. 65? 1965. No. Yes, you have been asleep for a long time. You have been ill. Something has happened to you. Do you understand? That is why you are confused. I'm confused. The voice sounded very tired now. Someone hurt you. Now you must tell us exactly who hurt you and what happened, and we will be able to help you. Do you understand? It is 30 years since 1935. You have what is commonly called died. You are no longer in the flesh. It is your mind that speaks to us. Do you understand that? There has been a change. It is your memory that keeps you in this house. But you are in no danger. No one can hurt you ever again. We are your friends. We have come to help you find peace. Now you must tell us what you have done. The papers. Who do you wish to have them delivered to? Keys. Keys? Is it Keys a name, or do you mean the Keys? Lord Keys. Lord Keys, he is your employer? Room 1216. Room 1216 where? In London. Where in London? Where? Admiralty. Admiralty? London. London. You want the papers delivered in London, but Lord Keys is dead too. He's gone. You need not keep your secret any longer. He has died? Genuine surprise filled the voice now. You are free to divulge your secret now. 30 years have gone on. You are free to speak. I am a greyhound. You don't understand. Then how can we locate these papers if we don't know where to look? I can't find them either, so I'll keep on looking. Tell me, what is this house like? Is there anything underneath that house that is unusual? I could hide outside if you'll take me out. How would you get out from this house? I won't tell you. I've been hidden, and I want to go back. There's not much room. There's not much room where? Where are you hiding? Outside. Where outside? Why do you want to know? So I can help you. How? Protect you. Too late. Don't you want to be helped? It's too late. Why is it too late? Something's gone wrong. What has gone wrong? I don't know. Can you guess what has gone wrong? No. Did someone kill you? What's kill you? Has someone killed you? Taken your life? Yes, hit me. Someone hit you? Who hit you? Abraham. Did he take the papers from you? No. Some of them. Where did he hit you? What part of the house? By the fire. Upstairs or downstairs? Downstairs, by the door. And then what did he do with you? I fell asleep. Yes, you fell asleep, and then what happened? Then I came back to find the papers. Did you find them? But my head's bad. And then what happened? She said she'd let me in. Who let you in? Marilyn. What did she do in this house? What was her position? She was looking after children. Did she know you? Yes. So she let you in? What did she do then? No, she didn't let me in. Why didn't she let you in? She wasn't faithful. She played. Did she see you? She knew I was there. She played, and I knew it was wrong. What was wrong? That she played. She wasn't safe. What did she play? She played Moonlight and Roses. On what instrument? A piano. What happened after that? She played, but I came in. Evidently, Marilyn's playing the song was a prearranged signal. Where did you go? I went to his bedroom. Whose bedroom? Abraham. All right. You went to his bedroom. What happened then? We talked, and then we came to the door, and we went to the fireplace, and then I made him angry. What did you make him angry with? About half the papers. You mean you had half the papers, or did he have them? He had half. Who had the other half? I did. And you didn't want to give him the other half? No. Where was the other half? Marilyn hid them. Where did she hide them? In the house. Where in the house? I don't know. She was going to tell me, and then I went to sleep. And she never told you? What did he do with his half of the papers? Can you hear me? Can you hear my voice? Can you hear my voice? But apparently, the greyhound had slipped away. Still, I needed more information. I decided to let Sybil look for it. Sybil? I suggested. Stay on your side of the veil, and before you awaken, answer me. Is there anything about this house that involves violence of any kind? Yes. Can you tell me what you feel? Very confused. Two people tried to come through. Who are they? A man and a woman. I can see the man. Can't see the woman. Did he die in this house? He was hurt. I think he died outside. Why was he hurt? Let me look around. I don't like this place. Why don't you like this place? It has got so many people coming and going. What is going on in this place that is unusual? People come for a little while and then they go away. They leave very bad vibrations. What sort of business is going on in this place? Business? What sort of business? What are they doing here, these people? What is their business in coming here? I don't know. It's some exchange. Exchange of what? Of books or something like that. Books? Is there anything underneath this house that needs explanation? Is there anything unusual about the structure of this house? He hid there. You mean after he was killed? No, before he was killed and after. And whom did he hide from? A man in the bedroom. Why did he hide from him? I think he was watching him. Whom was he watching? Why? Who was he watching him for, and why? I don't know. Do you know what is in those papers that he seems to have told me about? He wants the papers, but I don't. What is in the papers? The papers are in the book room. The book room? Are they in a book? Behind a book. Are they still there? Deep down, though. Deep down? Deep down, not where you'd put your hand on them. You have to... I had to change the tapes at this moment, and the entranced Sybil mentioned something about a wall. What do you mean, a wall? I continued my line of questioning. There are two walls. And what is in the back of those two walls? A cavity. What is in the back of the cavity? Another wall. What is the cavity for? Books and papers and that sort of thing. I can't see hard. Try. I can't get in very well. Try again. This is so dusty. But it is still there now, is it? Still there, but it's dusty and the dust comes into my throat. What sort of dust? Thick dust, like flour. Is anything behind those two walls? Papers. Outside of the papers, what else is there? I can't see because the wall goes on. Where does it lead to? Wait a minute. Don't rush me. All right, take your time. He came this way. He came this way? From where? From the woods. Who came this way? The man who was killed? Peter. This is where he hid. How can I prove he was not? I'm in the house and now I'm out. What's in between? There's something in between. All right, let us say there's something in between that wasn't always there. But try to see what there is now, at this moment behind the wall. Papers and what else? Papers. Is there anything else there? It's deep. I can only see papers. I don't like going outside. I'm not going outside. Is there a man or woman behind there? I'm not going outside. Is there a body in there? I'm not going outside. The voice sounded positively agitated now. Why don't you want to go outside? Why are you afraid? I'm not afraid. Well, why is it that you don't like going outside? Is it you, or do you feel this man who doesn't wish to go outside? He had to go outside, but I don't. Well then, stay inside and tell us what you see in the cavity, what you call the cavity. He's still there. Who's there? That man. He is still there. You said you'd do something about it. Don't leave him there. We have no intention of leaving him there. Is he there alone? Yes, you shouldn't leave anyone there. Would you tell this man, Peter, that there's no reason for him to stay in this house, that his mission has been accomplished and he may leave? He's not in the house. He's not in the house? Where do you sense him? He's outside. Is he free to go? He comes in. Now let me go. All right. Is there anything else you want to tell me? I want to go. I don't like this room. I don't like that wall. What is in the papers? Look at the papers. What is in those papers? Quick, look. If I look, you'll come. Yes, you must look. What are the papers about? Ships. Ships? What sort of ships? I don't know. Go and look at the papers and report back to me what you see. I can't read the writing. They're handwritten, not typed, and it's very difficult to read. Can you read any of it? Can you read the signatures? The signature is King, K-R, King, Realty, R-O something, R-O-G. R-O-G, 8 papers. What do they concern themselves with? I can't see, the writing is big, and I can't read them very well. Is there anything printed on top of the pages that you can easily read? It's written. Nothing official, no seal, no printing? Seal. Whose seal is it? RK. What language are they in? English. Look at the first line of some of the papers and see who they are addressed to. Just wait a minute. They're not letters. What are they? About some ship business. Specifically, what sort of ship business? I think it's some naval thing. I can't read this writing. Can you make out any words at all? Try. Make out Devassar. D-E-V-A-S-S-E-R. Who is Devassar? He is an admiral. All right, I will call you back. I hate things on walls. 2 walls. Who wants 2 walls? What should we do with those walls? I would take them away, but don't let him know. Don't let who know? Peter. Peter? But he's not there anymore. Oh, yes, he is. If we open those walls, would we find his body? Body, he's there. With those papers? Not with those papers. But you said they were there too. Papers in the house. Where in the house? In there, behind the books, behind the wall, behind another wall, and then there's another wall, and he's outside. But his body is in that cavity, is it? His body is outside. Where outside? From the paper, you go through the drains. The drains end in there, to the woods. To the woods? Where he is hiding. Where will we find the body exactly? I'm not going to go down that drain. I don't want you to go down the drain, but look. I am not going to go down that drain. I'm in the place where the books are, and there's a big slope, and then there's a straight piece to some trees, 3 trees, and you dig in there. Near the trees? In the trees. You mean underneath? There's a long tunnel. Long tunnel? It's a drain or something, I don't know. And that is where he is? That's where he is, poor man. All right, Sybil, I want you to come away from this wall. Come back to your own body, to the present. But Sybil was still fascinated by the past. Who put the wall there? Why did he have 3 walls? Never mind, don't worry about it. Come back. And back she came, waking up, rubbing her eyes, and remembering absolutely nothing of the past hour. Everyone was very quiet, still under the impact of what they just heard. I decided to question Bob Gray about his experiences now. Would you bring me up to date on what you personally have experienced in this house that you might classify as unusual? Shortly after coming into the house, Bob Gray began, I was fixing up one of the rooms and thought I heard my name called. There was no one else around at that particular time. One other evening, in the middle of the night, the player piano began to play, but it is electric and plays on a switch. What did it play? Did you recognize the tune? Whatever the roll that was on the piano, it finished the roll and automatically shut itself off. Can the piano be played manually too? Oh yes. Go on. One evening, a group of us were talking about ghosts and someone said they didn't believe in ghosts and a wind went whistling through the room. We checked and on the lowest level of the house a door, which is never open, it has an air conditioner in the door and a dehumidifier in front of it and a latch on it, was nevertheless fully open. By itself somehow? By itself. Is there anything unusual about the structure of the house? Well, it roams all over the countryside a little. It's been added to, and that's the only thing that's unusual. Is there anything unusual about the library? Well, there is this panel in the wall. Tell me about the panel and how it was found. Well, it was found just recently. How long ago did you get the house? 2.5 years. And when did you get the panel? I got to the panel just 3 months ago, but had the idea shortly after I came to the house. A woman who had lived here at one time stopped by and wanted me to identify the location of the panel. She said she'd been told by the owner at the time of her tenancy here there was a panel, but he didn't want to tell her where the panel was unless she bought the house. She was curious to know if there were one and where it was. I denied its existence, not having located it at this point. I was telling this story one night at a party some months ago. One of the couples went to the library and the girl just went right to the wall and started pulling books away and discovered the panel. This girl, was she in any way psychic or unusual? Not to my knowledge, but she said later that she felt she knew right where it was. What did it look like? It was wide enough to be a passage, and the passageway itself was blocked with a piece of concrete, maybe 25 inches wide and 30 inches long. Did you try to remove the cement? No. Did you have any desire to see what was in back of that? Curiosity that didn't match the desire to tear the wall apart. Is there anything underneath the house or outside the house that you found that was unusual for a dwelling of this kind? Well, at the time we first came into the house, there was a passageway or cave, tunnel, call it what you will, leading from one of the bedrooms out into the hillside. It went back about 15 feet and then branched off in a T. It was shored up by 4x4s on the side, but with very thin boards on top. The dirt and water was trickling down through these broken boards at the top. I was afraid to have anyone go in, and I simply had a man come with a claw digger and pull the dirt away and clear the top away and fill it in. It took a couple of loads before it stopped settling, and that was the end of the tunnel. Were the tunnels high enough for a man to go through? Yes, from the right side. It was only about 4 feet above the floor level, but if you stepped across down into the tunnel itself, it was about 7 feet tall. It was quite tall. So one could use it as an escape hatch? One could. This was obviously, to my eye at least, a very recent construction, and the The colonel, a Canadian Air Force colonel who had had the house before me, had admitted later that he had built the tunnel. He said he did it because President Kennedy had told him to build an air raid shelter. How long had the colonel been in this house? Around 3 years. Did any of the previous tenants before the colonel talk about the tunnels? No, the only previous tenant I've ever talked to was the woman who stopped by and wanted to know where the passageway was or the panel. You have no idea how old this house is then? No, it's 30 years or so. Can you recognize the spot described by Sybil in the trance as the likely spot? The trees where one might find a body? No, the place is surrounded with trees, and I have no idea where any group of trees is. At the end of the tunnel, I believe. Well, this particular tunnel I've described to you is one that went toward the drive rather than toward the trees in any area. In fact, one of the reasons that prompted me to have it filled in so quickly was that I was afraid the drive would collapse. Are there other tunnels going in other directions? There may be, but I don't know of any. Have you lived in Washington a long time? 8 years. A close associate of Bob Gray's, who has lived at the house for a long time also, then requested to be heard. I heard some noises, the gentleman said gravely, last winter. What exactly did you hear? I heard something that could have passed as a knock or a rattling at the door. I went to the door, and through there was fresh snow outside, and there were no tracks. Was this the door upstairs or downstairs? Actually, I went to each of the doors because I thought that it was someone at the door. Did anyone else outside yourself hear those noises? Yes, one other in the house. Another gentleman in the house? Yes. You have a lovely dog. What is his name? Well, his name is so distinctive, I'd like to skip that. All right. Doggy then. Did Doggy have any unusual experiences in this house? Yes, as a matter of fact, the dog is the only here on loan. He's not mine. But the last time I had him here was for a matter of 10 days or so, while his owner was away. Every night, exactly the same time, around 4 o'clock in the morning, the dog would start barking, really barking up quite a storm, always against the wall down here, just against the living room wall. In this room? Yes, rather than against or at door, he would always be barking at the wall. Is the wall in any way connected with the panel? It's on the other side of the panel area. I think the young man who preferred that his name be withheld for personal reasons. Ruth Montgomery, the columnist for the Hearst papers, who was then already very much interested in psychic research, even though she had not yet written her books along those lines, looked up with a serious expression. I asked her who knew about the Washington to be able to fill us in on the background of this house, and with her help and that of others in the room, I was able to piece together the most unusual account. The house had been built about 30 years before a man named Smith, who had been working with the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services. That agency was the forerunner of the CIA, kind of secret super spy agency of the United States government. He was a man of taste who collected artistic glass with a vengeance. Ostensibly to enrich his collection, he traveled around the world, although in reality he was gathering information for the OSS. The song that had been the signal for the spy to come in out of the damp was still on the old player piano roll. With a nervous laugh, Bob Gray switched it on and the roll played Moonlight and Roses, exactly as it had back in the 1930s when the Greyhound had met his doom because of it. I checked the data out with the librarian at the British Information Service in New York. Lord Keyes died December 26, 1945. His full name was Roger John Bromlin Keyes. He had been an admiral of the fleet who had retired in 1935, become a member of the Parliament until 1943, although in 1940 he returned to active duty again with the Royal Navy. At first, his job was as a special liaison with the King of Belgium, and it is interesting to note that Civil Leak mentioned the words royalty, king, prior to disclosing Roger Keyes' other functions. After serving as Director of Combined Naval Operations in 1940 and 1941, he became Naval Attaché in various European capitals. That post is often used as a cover for the Naval Intelligence Operative. Quite plainly, Lord Keyes was a Naval Intelligence Officer, though not in America. It is here that the spy's role becomes clear. He came from Keyes, either in his employ or on his orders, to seek out a contact in Washington. He mentioned the year 1935. Curiously, that was the year Keyes retired for the first time, to set up the intelligence service perhaps. At the time of sudden death, important dates sometimes become fixed in the mind of the victim and are remembered rather than less impressive later date. I still wondered about the term greyhound, but what I had suspected about its true meaning was confirmed by a dictionary of slang and unconventional English. Greyhound, a hammock with little bedding, unfit for storage in the nettings, a nautical term. Was that it? Not quite. Ocean greyhound, a fast Atlantic liner. That was it then. The spy was a fast courier between Europe and America, truly a greyhound, quiet and fast, bent on his mission. The missing papers, of course, were never found, nor did Bob Gray make any attempt to locate the body, if there was one, in the closed-off tunnel. He was too fond of his beautiful house in the woods to start tearing down the wall just because a lowly British courier had met his death somewhere in it. I suppose the greyhound isn't running anymore, either, as I have heard nothing further from either Gray or Ruth Montgomery on this. Perhaps he has met up with his employer, Lord Keyes, in the land where missing documents don't mean a thing. Well, on that note, boys and girls, we are going to go to our second music break. On this break, once again, we have the lovely Miss Mia Savage with her band, Antidote for Savages. She is going to be singing one of my favorites, Bury Me in Heaven, Singing to Your Grave, The Bottom Line, and Not a Phase. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this music break.
right now between fear and love.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us this evening on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. So we just got done with Holzer's Real Haunting, True American Ghost Stories. We're going to continue on during this third hour with Reddit Ghost Stories. This one is by u/any-pomegranate6928. Greece, summer 2008. I am 16 years old. My father rented me a room so I could find some peace in a luxury club near Athens. One night, I hear a woman screaming in anger, knocking on the wall near my bed. I'm going to knock at the door. They won't let me in. Then I go back to my room again. Silence. Good, I go back to bed. The very next day, I get up quite early, and the day goes by. It is good, but at nightfall, the same story happens again. This time, I respond by hitting on the wall. At my bedroom's balcony, I go out and I try to see what is happening on the other side, but the light is off. I wonder if it's not a couple making fierce love, but there's no doubt. What I hear at that moment are clearly annoyed, angry cries. I'm going to knock again. No one answers me. I go to the reception to finally complain about the noise, although I don't like it. Maybe it could be a woman who has been abused by a violent husband, but the staff tells me that the room next to mine is free and therefore totally empty. I'm going back to bed, and this story gives me chills. Eventually, a couple moves into the cursed bedroom. I'm rather reassured, but does not last long. When I go swimming at the pool, I see them at the reception complaining that their bathroom is disgusting and the room is very noisy, which is surprising because I did not hear anything weird. I'm starting to have nightmares. I dream of a woman hanging in a laundromat. The image disturbs me a lot. The staff probably offered another room to the couple who left. I've even heard some knock-knock sounds on the wall. When I secretly smoked on the balcony, the light turned on by itself. I also asked to change rooms. This time, it was in a building facing the one where I slept for a few nights. I was really obsessed with this cursed room. One night, the person who now occupied the room waved to me, but I was in the dark. Maybe she/he was waving at someone else? But the screaming came back. The club was closed forever, and I've never experienced a similar situation again. This is all pure coincidence. There must be an explanation. Maybe there was a living person who secretly lived in the room this whole time. Dead or alive, it does not seem okay. This one is by I'm Ben Scribner. Grandparents' wedding rings. Hello all. I'm going to keep this short as there's not much to explain. A few years ago, we were moving my 87-year-old grandfather out of the house he lived in and into a nursing home because the house was too big for him to take care of. My grandmother passed away back in 2005, and at some point during their marriage, they had both of their wedding rings linked together, and they always sat pinned to my grandfather's corkboard in the office above his computer. Well, as we were moving him out, my stepmom was clearing off the corkboard and as soon as she unpinned the rings from the board, the hallway lights outside his office room started dimming and flickering for about 15 seconds. Everyone stopped what they were doing and, in a startled position, just stared at the lights. After the 15 seconds were over, the light came back on like normal and never flickered like that the rest of the day. We all like to think that she was with us that day. This one is by u/realist hater. Paranormal. This was one of the strangest investigations of my career as a paranormal investigator. I was contacted by a middle-aged couple regarding problems with a car overriding the operator's driving commands. The car was recently given to their son by the parents of a deceased teen. The deceased person was actually their son's best friend who was killed in a vehicle accident when the two had exchanged cars for the night. Their son had a new Jeep Cherokee that his friend wanted to use to go on a date. While on said date, the friend was involved in an accident with a drunk driver and perished. The deceased boy's parents signed over the title of his Toyota pickup both as a general gift and to replace his vehicle that was totaled in the wreck. I investigated the car with the help of a Toyota mechanic. He checked all the systems, including the computer, braking, engine, and all sensors. Nothing was found. I drove the truck for 2 days on a normal daily routine with my DVR, EMF meter, camcorder, and dash cam running. No evidence collected. I returned the vehicle with my findings that I did not believe the vehicle was haunted. 6 weeks later, I was again contacted by the couple. The father was using the truck when suddenly the vehicle made an abrupt right turn, locked up the brakes, and went into the ditch. At the same time, a car driven by a drunk entered the road from a side street without stopping and proceeded to slam into a tree. All of this was witnessed by a sheriff who just happened to be near by running a radar. The drunk driver sustained minor injuries and the father was unhurt. I was provided with the sheriff's number and asked to call him. When I called and told him what I was calling in reference to, he was happy to share not only a reading of the report that he filed, but information he said that could not include or be included in the report also. His report stated that while conducting a normal duties, he witnessed a Mustang run a stop sign at speed and turn onto the road, fishtailing and tire squealing. Almost immediately, it left the road and slammed head-on into a tree at approximately 45 miles per hour. He checked the accident victim and found him unconscious and with minor trauma to the forehead. There was an open bottle of vodka spilling onto the passenger seat. The sheriff's statement not included in the report. I was parked facing an oncoming pickup truck when I witnessed it lock up its brakes and make a sharp right turn into the ditch. My initial thought was that it was stolen and the driver panicked when he saw me. Before I could react, the Mustang entered from a side road about 50 feet in front of me and turned toward the pickup, which had entered the ditch about 200 feet before it and would have reached the side road. The driver of the pickup could not have seen the Mustang's approach due to trees and brush obscuring his line of sight. If he had not turned into that ditch, there would have been an unavoidable impact between the two vehicles. How he knew to react the way that he did is beyond me. The driver's statement to me was that he did not perform the action. The truck did it by itself. This one is by u/SunnyRay02. 2-year-old sees my grandpa. I moved about 8 hours away from my family years ago. We go home several times a year. That time is usually split between my family and my husband's. I have an enormous family, so I don't always get to see everyone when I'm there. My 2-year-old son had met my grandpa only 2 or 3 times. My grandpa had early dementia. At family functions, he would sit but not really engage. He would smile and would nod when you spoke to him, but that was it those last few years. When he was healthy, he was a giant personality. Absolutely adored kids, had a big booming voice, a big storyteller, and he was everyone's grandpa. My son had only ever heard me refer to him as my grandpa when talking to my husband, family, or friends. I called my grandpa Papa, though. My son never heard me say that. A week before he passed, I gave birth to my second son. Knowing how much he loved kids, I FaceTimed him in the hospital and told him he had a new great-grandson. He nodded and cried tears of happiness. At this point, his dementia was so bad, he no longer could speak. My 2-year-old kept telling us there was a ghost and would point and say there was a man following Mom with the baby. It was unsettling because I have had experiences my entire life. I would just be super casual and ask my son if he was scared or if the man was mean or whatever, and he would say no. One night, I was putting my son to bed, and I pray every night when I got to the part where I asked God to surround his bed with angels to keep the evil away from my son. It stopped me. Got a big smile and said, "Papa comes, protects me." I was in total shock. I pulled up a photo of him, and my son pointed and said, "Yes, the man is Papa." I asked him how he knew his name, and he then told me that Papa told him. A quiet night in Boynton Beach, Florida. So, my parents are divorced and my mom still lives in our old house. Their income together was able to make us upper middle class, and we have big windows in the back of our house and very open and not super private. I mean, we're safe. My brother has had prior ghost experience a few years ago. About when he was 7. I am 12 and about to be 13 in May. It is currently January 1st, 2023. I came from a trip with my dad, and this happened around 8 p.m. My current knowledge is below. Mom told us she was dictating on Microsoft Word in her office room, and then she stopped talking to think without any noise because she was alone. It read, "Hey." Then she deleted it and thought it to be a glitch, and it typed it again. And the house was quiet, like pin drop quiet. I haven't heard much more. Right now, I am freaked out and everything seems normal. I am playing prayers over my and my brother's phone. My mom's friend is over with us. I don't know how Reddit really works because I am new to it. I will try to update everyone every day with any news that I get. We are going to sleep in one room together, not the friend, but that is obvious, and play Chupwa Sahib. My family has many ghost stories that are on my dad's side, like my grandpa and dad on, I think, Prince Edward Island up in Canada. But that is a whole other story, and they are very long. It is honestly easier to speak it, so I might never post it because it is very hard to type it out with background. Right now, we are starting to burn incense. If you have read this far, thank you, and please feel free to reply with advice. Anything will help. This one is by u/Izuku_Deku134. clearly hearing my mother's voice in my bathroom only for her to come out of her room. How do you explain that? So I heard knocking at my door that awoke me, and I investigated it when I opened my door. It was 4 a.m. in the morning. I knocked on my bathroom door and heard my mom saying, "I'm just in the restroom, getting your clothes, give me a minute." And I was like, okay. Then not a minute later, my mom came out of her room holding a basket of clothes. I looked at her confused and asked her if she was in my bathroom, and she shook her head and she said, "I was in my bathroom getting my clothes." That made my heart skip a beat, and I told her, "But you were in the restroom just now." And again she shook her head. "No, I wasn't. I was in my bathroom." I just looked confused at her for the rest of the night, and I stayed awake and eventually went to sleep at 6 a.m. in the morning today. This one is by u/realist hater. Ghost dog playing. I live in a very rural area in the southwest Georgia. I had 2 dogs who are friendly and love to play. One clear sunny day, I had the dogs out in the yard when a strange dog showed up. It was running all around the yard with my dogs, chasing. They all 3 seemed to be really enjoying their game of chase, and it lasted about 15 minutes. The strange dog finally ran full speed into the side of my home and disappeared into it. They were running at top speed, and my dogs had trouble stopping before they slammed into the side of the house themselves. They stayed in that immediate area searching for the other dog. It actually appeared that they were frantic in their search, whining and sniffing while running in circles. I went to see what happened to the dog since I had witnessed the whole thing standing about 100 feet away. There was no place that dog could have gone, no damage, no hole under the house, no sense to it at all. The dog just vanished into thin air. I'd never seen that dog before and have not seen it since. Ghost dog, maybe? This one is by u/honest tackle. Callie, a djinn take the form of my friend. At the end of 2007, I was in 7th grade. On that day, the last month of Ramadan, known as Jandarat, was a time of special affection between everyone. My cousins decided to take advantage of the occasion and play a game of hide and seek in the backyard. The atmosphere was filled with joy and excitement as we all ran around trying to find the best hiding spots. The architecture of our house is similar to that of 2 neighboring houses. We have a large front yard, and on one side is a cookery house, which can also be referred to as a sitting room. Beyond the old courtyard lies a small road that leads to the surrounding area. At the time, the road was lined with many trees, all of which were cut down and taken to the sawmill the following day. At the start of the game of hide and seek, it was my duty to locate everyone. As the players scattered, the atmosphere became eerily quiet. I scoured the area, my eyes darting around for any sign of movement. Suddenly, I spotted a woman wearing a black veil striding down the street. It was the neighbor's aunt, a devout woman who often went to different places to receive talim, Islamic education. I called out to her, but she didn't respond. I approached the woman in the black veil cautiously, but before I could react, she spun around and gave me a powerful shove, sending me sprawling. When I looked up, I was met with a face that I had never seen before, a face that was so terrifying that I couldn't help but scream. My cousins rushed out upon hearing my cries, followed by our guardian. After hearing my story, they searched the area thoroughly, but to no avail. The mysterious figure had vanished. It has been quite some time since then, and there have been no issues. The issue arose precisely 2 years later, in 2009. I was in my 10th grade at the time. My favorite subject was computers. So I joined the computer class beforehand, which takes 23 minutes to go from our village. I used to come and go by bicycle every day. One day I was coming after class. The time was a little before the Maghrib call to prayer. I hope I said that correctly. On the way there was a monastery or temple opened by Hindus. I saw a friend of mine standing in the front of the opening of that monastery. I exclaimed, "What the heck? Why are you just standing here?" My friend glanced at me and replied in a soft voice, "For no reason." "Come on, I'll take you home." "Okay, let's go." I was cycling with my friend behind me, and after a while, it felt like there was something incredibly heavy behind my bicycle. I was much heavier than my friend, so I assumed it was a mistake in my mind. Then the Maghrib Azan began, and it felt like there was no one behind me anymore, and the bike became much lighter. I looked back and saw my friend sitting there, and everything was normal. I said a lot, but he didn't answer. Eventually, we arrived at my friend's house. His house is situated in the middle of a vast field, with a bench nestled beside a coconut tree. My friend informed me no one is home. They all went to Nanabari, which is grandfather's house. "Why don't you take a seat here? I'll be back shortly with a dub," which is a green coconut, from home. After I'd been sitting for a while, my friend brought the green coconut. We were enjoying our beverages together when he suddenly asked me, "Do you know this place?" "Why, don't you recognize it? This is your home, the road in front of the house." "Who said this?" "Well, don't you know me?" "Don't be silly. Take a good look at me and tell me if you recognize me." "Why are you doing this to me?" My body froze in place. I saw him leaning against the bench, his long hair cascading down his back, his body covered in thick fur, and his face twisted in a grotesque expression. The moonlight illuminated him, and I began sprinting in terror. As I raced into the field, I noticed numerous rat burrows and craters scattered across the terrain. Suddenly, a hand emerged from one of the holes and yanked my leg. I freed the leg with great difficulty, and I had no idea how long I had been running. Eventually, I heard the call of prayer, and then a menacing voice from behind. After sprinting for a short distance, I collided with a man and tumbled to the ground, and I passed out. Fortunately, he was an imam of nearby mosque. Huzur ushered me into the mosque with a few of the worshippers who were accompanying him. Upon seeing the scratches and wounds that covered my body, he attempted to staunch the bleeding. After reciting some surahs over me, I regained consciousness. I recounted the entire incident to him, and after reciting something else, he blew into a glass of water and gave it to me to drink. Finally, Baba escorted me home from the mosque. After returning home, I phoned my friend and discovered that he was at Nana's house. Later, I was informed by Hafez that a jinn called Kali had followed me from the temple by taking the form of my friend. This one is by u/fetus_the_deletus. I knew my Nana died because I saw her. A few months ago, I lost my Nana. My mom and dad went to see her, not knowing it would be the last time. I was in the lounge listening to music when I thought I saw someone walk up the stairs. I then realized it was a shadow, and before I could do anything, the shadow was gone. I don't know how, but I just knew my Nana died, and when my parents came home, they told me she passed. I have this feeling that she visited me before she went home. Also, my Nana died on her wedding anniversary / her husband's birthday. He had passed years before. This one is by u/external_nebula_4089. Our grandma was trying to communicate. Our grandma passed away in August. She was only 69. We've had weird things going off with our Wii. It's definitely not something faulty or malfunctioning, because these aren't regular errors you encounter. We were just playing Mario Kart Wii when we were disrupted by an error saying that there's player 4 that wants to connect. The Wii remote was in the ottoman under a bunch of stuff. We searched for remotes and finally found it. It was blinking blue like it does when someone is connecting. We had to just turn off the Wii after that. The next occurrence was weird. The lights were flickering and the Wii remote batteries kept dying and then recharging, and it kept doing this for like 5 minutes before, and then it stopped. We were pretty sure it could have been something paranormal because they do usually interrupt with electricity. And this one is by u/the Ghost Guy Band. I think we have a picture of a ghost of a boy who drowned. During the pandemic, when that was very huge and everyone was in quarantine, 3 of my cousins came over to visit. They are on my Nana's side of the family. I live with my grandparents and they are from Ohio. I remember when one of my cousins told me the story of how a ghost was in a photo a friend took of him. Basically, my cousin, when he was younger, played in the basement of his house a lot. They lived and still do live in a wonderful farmhouse with their siblings. One time, he had one of his friends come over to play. While they were playing, his friend decided to take a photo of my cousin while they were on the stairs leading down into the basement. After he took the picture, he noticed that there was a black figure standing in the photo. We still have that photo. The story doesn't end there, though. There is a lake not too far from where the farmhouse is. Years and years ago, there was a boy who drowned there tragically, so you probably see where this is going. I think that the dark figure in the photo was the boy who drowned. He drowned at a young age, by the way. And it would also make sense because since he was young, the black figure could have been there trying to play. Heck, maybe the boy didn't even know that he was dead, making this a Sixth Sense-like scenario. Either way, this is just a theory. If I get the photo, I will update this and include it. This one is by u/Charleston Tracy. My supernatural experience. Do you have a story? If you've ever had a supernatural experience, please share it. Here's my story. On my 11th birthday, I received a Ouija board as a gift. Yes, a Ouija board. Before anyone scoffs at this gift, it was considered a game and sold at Toys R Us, and some kids liked being scared, and that was us. Anyway, I had a sleepover with friends after receiving it, and we all used it, and of course nothing happened because it's just a game, right? Well, a few weeks went by and my best friend was staying the night. We had dinner and then my mom gave us ice cream inside coffee mugs. We asked if we could take it to my room and eat it, and my mom said yes. We were sitting on my daybed, and when we finished the ice cream, we decided to play with the Ouija board. We placed our mugs on the floor right next to the bed and started messing with the board. Nothing ever really happened, but it was just exciting to be a little scared. When we were ready for a break, I reached down to grab the mugs. I immediately froze when I realized that not only were the spoons not in the mugs, they were next to the mugs, both broken at the neck. I started crying and took everything to my mom. She took the game away and I never saw it again. This still gives me goosebumps to this day. I just can't think of anything that would have caused the spoons to break. It's something I don't really like to think about. Do you have a story? This one is by you/German_99. Encounter with a shadow person. This happened a few years back. There hasn't been much activity in the house since. It was a quiet summer night in both 2015 or 2014. My oldest brother claimed to have encountered this thing before with his girlfriend. It scared them both enough to where they were sitting outside the house, too scared to go back inside when I came back from the grocery store. The story goes as follows. In the basement, the only bedroom is set up with a bed facing the doorway. When this door is open, you can see outside to the living room downstairs. My oldest brother and his girlfriend were laying down on this bed together talking. He was facing the wall and she was facing towards the doorway. She looked up from their conversation to see a little girl watching them from the doorway. She was obviously scared, but not wanting to alarm my brother. She didn't say anything. She looked up again. This time the girl was next to the bed. She had enough and wanted to get out of the house immediately. I've always looked at this story with skepticism, as I've never really encountered anything paranormal myself. Of course, until it was my turn. Fast forward to 2015 or 2014, when this room was now in possession of a different brother of mine. We were both into art, and I liked to hang out in his room because he owned most of the art supplies, and we'd turn it into a makeshift art studio when he wasn't sleeping, of course. We had the door open, and the light outside in the living room was turned off. I was sitting on his bed working in a sketchbook when I look up and see the dark outline of a little girl watching me from the doorway. I don't feel particularly threatened or in danger, just confused at what I'm looking at. I know it's a girl because I can see her, short hair, stopping at the shoulders. She was also wearing a dress, though not long like a gown. She held her arms straight down, though slightly outwards, as if she was walking only moments before. The thing that stuck with me was I couldn't see her face. I was trying to make sense of what was happening, just as my brother gets up in a hurry and closes the door. He then asked me, "Did you see that too?" To this day, we still talk about what we both saw in that basement. It's been very quiet since. This is an older house built in the 1950s with many different owners. I couldn't tell you what happened here, as I don't know. Only the visitors often say they feel uneasy here and that sometimes my dog behaves very strange. Maybe he sees things I can't. I've always been open-minded to the paranormal, but not necessarily religious. I have a deep love for science, but cannot explain to you what I saw that night. This one is by you/Zalfadaman. A encounter we'll never forget. I live in Louisiana, and it was about 2 years ago in mid-November, me, age 14 at the time, my younger sibling, age 12, and younger cousin, age 13, were hanging out over the weekend. Our mother had hit a tree earlier that week down their driveway, and we asked him to show us. It was probably about 9:30 p.m. I grab my phone, and we walk out the door, and we're walking down the hill as he tells me about how our mother had hit a tree from being intoxicated that night a week ago. Our cousin was showing us what tree she hit and the story she had told them. He pauses, everything appears silent, no crickets, no frogs, ambitious, nothing. I think that meant amphibians. Our phone batteries drain and our lights turn off. My phone is at 20%, however. It did not die, it just powered itself off. My sister's, which was at 30%, was now dead. My cousin did not have a phone at this time, but he had a flashlight, which the batteries were now dead in. We all look at each other, dead in the eyes, only being able to see each other from the moonlight illuminating our faces. We look away into the forest, then we hear the screeches and something coming at us on all fours. They book it in the dark as I fumble to turn the light on, and so do I a few minutes later. I'm running up the hill as I hear heavy panting, occasionally screeches as this creature is picking up its speed. They claim to hear just screeches the whole way that night. We all make it back unharmed, out of breath, and alive. I am now 16, and we still wonder and talk about what we encountered that day. Needless to say, we don't go outside after dark anymore. Here's a little background info. My cousins live out in the woods with wolves, coyotes, and about 7 dogs at the time that had roamed the woods around that time, so it wasn't unusual to hear things like this. However, this thing, I'm assuming it was a creature, was much larger than a dog, coyote, or wolf. And it also doesn't explain the silence we heard that night. Well, on that note, boys and girls, it is the end of our time this evening. Thank you once more for joining me on Storytime with me, TessaTNT, and yeah, just dealing with my shenanigans all around. I'm so grateful for you guys and so glad that we've all found each other in this crazy place we call the world. For sure, it's definitely a crazy place. I also want to thank all of my friends on We Are Paradox Media's Facebook, KPNL Radio, Twitter, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and wherever else beyond the Omniverse you may be listening tonight. I had a wonderful time, and I can't wait to do it again next weekend. On Saturday, we have Miss Mama Mary, and we're either going to do story time with me, TessaTNT, or we might have Miss Mia Savage on, but we haven't figured out a date yet. Anywho's, thank you so much. Don't forget, we are all in this together. Together, we can make the world a little better. And together, my friends, we are Paradox Media, because without you, there is no us, and this would totally be pointless. Until next time, nighty night, love and light. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Please don't work too hard. Please stay safe out there on those icy, slippery roads. Stay warm if you are in a warm place. Talking to you guys over there in Australia. But I'll see you back here next weekend. Same crazy time, same crazy place. Take care of my yous.